Is the front yard the only place you have sun and space to grow a vegetable garden? Worried what the neighbors might think if you ripped out some lawn to put in vegetables? Oh, the humanity. Do you have a nosy HOA president living next door? In this series, we're going to be building and growing 2 front yard vegetable gardens or edible landscapes that will be so beautiful they will fool even the nosiest neighbor. Hey, I'm Brian with Next Level Gardening, and if you are looking to join an online garden community that offers tips, tricks, and support, you're in the right place. Start now by clicking subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss anything. It's one of my favorite days of the year. No, it's not the first day of spring just yet, but it is the day that we get an extra hour in the evenings of sunlight. You know, in Southern California, we don't get very many season changes like you do elsewhere, so this is kind of a season change, for me at least. On yesterday's video, I showed you the plans and started some of the groundwork for my 2 front yard vegetable gardens or edible landscapes. It was a tough video to do, definitely room for improvement, but I've got enough practice time over the next year to make that happen. After the camera was off yesterday, I set to work trimming this hedge. And boy, did I trim it. I cut at least 8 feet off the top. It's actually shorter now than it has been since we moved in. But I kind of like it. I forgot there was sky and trees over there. I wanted to really kickstart this series with a simple checklist of the 10 things to think about when starting your edible landscape or front yard vegetable garden. The first thing to think about is this going to be a formal space or an informal space? Now back here behind me in the rose bed, that's going to be the more formal area. Boxwood hedges kind of always lend that look anyway, so I'm just going to go with it. And then across the driveway in the other bed, that's going to be more informal. I've got the birdies, metal raised beds, and I've got the bamboo teepees. I don't think you see too many of them at Villandry. So a formal setting would have hedging, lines, you know, more straight lines, geometric patterns, and an informal area would have more curves, a little bit more blousy planting, kind of overhanging planting into paths, that kind of thing. And it's really a personal preference. I like both, so fortunately, I have 2 spaces. I can do both. The second thing you want to think about, whether it's formal or informal, is to have a focal point. Focal points, and if you can, lines leading to that focal point really add interest to the garden. Interest that continues even into off-season, or maybe if your garden's covered in snow, those things will still be present. So for instance, in my backyard, when you come out of our house onto the patio, the covered patio, there's a focal point that draws you out. Well, I have several actually, but one toward the vegetable garden would be the chicken coop. If you're on the lawn, a focal point toward the vegetable garden would be the gazebo. And I specifically planned the vegetable garden where the beds were equidistant apart and exactly the same amount of feet apart as the gazebo. So as you're standing on the lawn, you're seeing the lines of the beds kind of draw your eye toward the gazebo. I did have to give up some planting space there, but it was a good trade-off, and I'm happy I did it for the visual effect. Now, as a lot of you know, I'm a Disney nut. I used to work for Disney, and Disney employs focal points in every one of their parks. You know, you come into any of their parks on Main Street, and what is at the end of Main Street? The castle. If you're in front of the castle and you're looking toward any of the lands, all of those lands have focal points. Walt Disney called them weenies to attract you as the dog after the weenie to go in one direction. So kind of think about that. Now, in my informal garden out there, it's really going to be my teepees. I'm going to have 3 teepees. The 2 side ones are going to be shorter, and the middle one is going to be taller. So that's going to create a triangle that will create an invisible line that will draw your eye toward the center teepee. Your focal point could be an arbor, a bird bath, a fountain, even a group of sunflowers planted at the end of a path. The third thing you want to think about is a color scheme and color harmonies. As I mentioned on yesterday's video, both of my beds are going to have a pink purple color scheme. Now you wanna, if you know much about a color wheel, or even if you don't, I'm gonna give you the basics right now. There are colors that look good together, they're pleasing to the eye, and there are colors that clash and don't look so good together. If you're looking at a color wheel, colors that would look good next to each other in the garden are either colors that are right next to each other, so in terms of orange, red and yellow would look good, or the color that's directly opposite them on the wheel. So if we're talking about orange, that would be blue. Pink and orange, on the other hand, not so good. Those are classic clashing colors in the garden. Red and blue would be another one. They look great together on the flag, not so much in the garden, unless you're going for a patriotic theme, and then it would make sense. Throw some white in there. Don't get too caught up in this. Choose a couple of colors and stick with that. You can add in white flowers for highlights. You can add in different shades of the same color for instance, red, magenta, pink, to add visual interest. And silvery gray foliage looks really good with pastel colors. Let me know in the comments below if you already have a color theme in mind and what plants you plan on putting into that theme. So number 4 would be plan for edibles first, and then choose ornamentals that fit in and will thrive in the same conditions. So if we're talking, maybe if you have a shadier area and you're gonna be doing greens and brassicas and lettuce, then you're not gonna go with roses, and you're not gonna go with dahlias, and you're not gonna go with lavender, because those all need hot sun. So choose plants like impatiens, begonias, ferns even. Number 5 is not everything has to be edible. You can use flowers and trees that are not edible to complement the edibles in the landscape. For instance, I don't think petunias are edible, but look at this picture with the pink petunias and the pinkish red chard. It's beautiful, right? In this picture, I definitely know that foxgloves are not edible. In fact, they're poisonous, but look how great they look in an edible landscape. Again, I don't have anything to do with this book or the author. I just think if you're interested in this, you should definitely get this book, and I will link it down below. Yes, I do get a couple of pennies off of your Amazon purchase, but I can't recommend this book more highly if you're finding anything at all useful in these videos. Okay, we're halfway through the video. If you're getting anything out of this, please hit the like button. It helps support the channel and pushes this video out to those nosy neighbors so they can find it, watch it, and finally get you. All right, number 6, use espaliers as living art. Could even be a focal point. You might not have room for a fruit orchard, but with espaliers, you can grow a ton of fruit in a really small space. I've got 2 apples and a lemon tree in the backyard. They are in a bed that's only 1 foot wide, and they produce a bumper crop every single year. You can have them as a screen or living wall around your garden, and they're not as difficult to train as you might think. In fact, one of my very first videos that I ever did was actually making my potted lemon tree into an espalier. So I'm gonna put that link down below. Number 7 is don't forget the herbs. Herbs are just as ornamental as an ornamental that's not edible, but herbs are edible. You can use thyme as a low-growing herb around stepping stones or around edges. You can even make a hedge out of rosemary. And I'll tell you right now, it's gonna grow a lot faster than a boxwood hedge. And you can use it in cooking. Lavender is actually one of my favorites. And the first video that I actually got traction on this channel was how to grow lavender. So I'll link that down below as well. Number 8 is add perennials. You know, perennials in the landscape are great because they're something you don't really have to think about that come back year after year. You can add perennial vegetables, and you can add perennials, ornamentals to your edible vegetable garden, to your what's it called?
Edible landscape?
Thank you. To your edible landscape. Some examples of ornamental vegetables would be artichokes, asparagus, strawberries, and I'm even adding some echinacea, which is a perennial, but it's also a medicinal herb. Another great thing about perennials is they provide a lot of winter interest if you don't cut them down. Number 9 is experiment with vegetable and ornamental combinations. Now this book has a ton of them. And I just want to read you 3 or 4 just to get your mind kind of working in that direction. A walkway bordered with intense red-leafed bull's blood beets mixed with white alyssum. Pimento or red cherry peppers planted among red coleus or in front of the silvery green culinary sage edged with dwarf red salvia, or a path bordered by dwarf red runner beans backed with giant red and white striped peppermint zinnias. This book is full of those kind of things. The combinations are endless. Let your imagination run wild. If something works, make a note of it. If it doesn't, forget about it and try something new. Which brings us to number 10. Don't stress and have fun with this. Nothing is set in stone. And I'm really talking to myself as much as I'm talking to you because I'm doing this for the first time in front of thousands of people. So you can definitely do it too. And on that note, I hope today's video, along with yesterday's, gives you the inspiration and a jumping off point to get started on your own edible landscape or front yard vegetable garden. And hopefully between the book, if you have it, and these videos, you'll know everything you need to know. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next time.